Thomas cooks. There's several things I want to talk about, but I'll start at the beginning. Almost 6 years ago, when on vacation, I went to a cooking class where I was, and it was really a very nice experience. It was very enjoyable. Pretty much day long. They picked us up just about at the hotel and then drove us out of the city for half an hour. And then we had the event and we ate, and then they drove us back to the city. So it was a really nice operation. When I got back here, more and more I was hearing that tourists were saying they wanted experiences and not just the beach and the jewelry stores. And so then I got to thinking about the experience back there, and I said, that was a really nice experience, maybe it'll work here. So I started talking to people about that as an idea. Nobody said to me, that's a horrible idea, why would you think of something like that? Everybody was saying, yeah, that sounds good. So I just continued to work on the project. I got back in contact with the people at the place that we went and told them that, reminded them who I was, because it was a year and a half later, and told him that I was interested in doing something similar to what he and his wife were doing there. Would he work with me? He said, sure. And so then I continued on down the road and eventually opened St. Thomas Cooks. It took a while. Our first class, what St. Thomas Cooks is we do cooking classes for locals and tourists. Most of the clients so far have been tourists because they find us online, and they've started to find us on TripAdvisor, which is really very good, because folks who've gone through have contacted TripAdvisor and said we had a good experience. And so other people, we had a group a couple of weeks ago from Colorado, and I always ask them, well, how did you find out about us on TripAdvisor? And so when they're leaving, everybody's happy, and so I say, would you please contact TripAdvisor and tell them how good you're feeling now? And so hopefully that will continue. St. Thomas Cooks is focused on local cooking, and local cooking now means St. Thomas cuisine. But since I'm in charge, then I have the option of changing the definition of local cooking as we go along, and I'm planning to do that. The first change is going to be to add St. Croix, because I've learned that there are dishes on St. Croix that have the same name as dishes here that are prepared differently. And so I want to put that out into the air so that more people know that, and get some folks from over there to come and talk about it. So that's going to be the first redefinition of local cooking. The next redefinition of local cooking is going to be to add the Caribbean. You know, because all of these islands have similar things, but different things. And so I want to get recipes and ways of cooking that come in from Summit, or eventually all of the other islands. Because sometimes because I have an evaluation form that I give everybody when they leave, and I ask them, well, what can we do to improve what we're doing? And occasionally I get something, well, we'd like to hear more about the Caribbean cuisines. And one example is here, peas and rice. In Haiti is rice and beans. Here is pigeon peas, there it's red beans. And somebody uses black beans. I have to research that. I don't know if it's Puerto Rico, or I'm sure Mexico does. But other islands do different things, and not only do they use different beans, but they put the order of them different. Like I just said, peas and rice here, but in Haiti it's rice and beans. And so there's similarities, but there are differences, and so I don't see any problem with highlighting that. The introduction mentioned that I'm from Louisiana, so one of the other expansions that I'm going to make on local cooking farther down the line is to add New Orleans. I've learned that there are historic links between St. Thomas and New Orleans. And some evidence that I've seen of it, that I know, is when you're going down Main Street and you look up at the balconies and you see the wrought iron on the balconies on Main Street. A lot of those remind me of the French Quarter. but there's a history, and I'm trying to learn the history. So if any of you know somebody who knows some of that history, I would like to talk with them to find out what that is, because what I want to do when I get to the New Orleans part is to bring a chef here from New Orleans and to really make a big deal about it, but also to share the history, because the history is important. Part of what we do with our clients is, well, let me give you the 5 steps. First, when everybody comes in, I just have them sit down and do introductions. Who are you? Where are you from? Why are you on St. Thomas? And what's your expectation for this class? So we just go around and do that. Next, I do history and culture session of the Virgin Islands. And so we talk about what are the official 3 islands that make up the Virgin Islands. Most of the tourists don't know that. Some of the locals try to add Water Island, but that's the trick word, and what I add, and my question was official. And so Water Island is part of St. Thomas. And so I have to work them through that. Then I ask about, well, how large is St. Thomas? How many square miles is it? And how does that compare to the smallest state in the United States? Most of them know that Rhode Island is the smallest state in the U.S., but they have no idea the comparison. They'll say, well, is Rhode Island 3 or 4 times larger? No. 10? No. It ends up being 38 times larger than St. Thomas. And I go through how many square miles there are here, there are 32 here, and compared to 86 St. Croix and 20 on St. John, and so we just talk about that a little bit. Nothing real serious. I started out, I did a quiz of 10 questions, and we did a practice walkthrough before we opened with mostly locals. And so I gave them that quiz, and they struggled through it. And they finally got, 1 or 2 of the people finally got most of the answers, but it was really local focused. And they said, that's not fair to tourists. And so that's why I changed it to things like how many islands, square footage, altitude, what's the highest point on St. Thomas, what's the highest point on St. Croix, what's the highest point on St. John. You may or may not know that the highest point on St. John is higher than the highest point on St. Croix, but that's always interesting. The next part of the history and culture is I ask from what country did the U.S. purchase the U.S. Virgin Islands, when and why? And sometimes people know Denmark, but the last group I had, they didn't get close. The teens, they zero in on that, so I make sure they know that it's 1917. But then the why is interesting, and I tell them, they're always, when something is bought or sold, there are always 2 answers to that. There's the buyer's answer, and then there's the seller's answer. And so, for why Denmark wanted to sell these islands is because it just became too expensive for them. Administratively, they weren't making as much money here as they were spending to keep it going. So that's why they were interested in selling. Why did the U.S. want the U.S. Virgin Islands?
Military.
Mainly military. It had to do with sub base and the fact that submarines could come in there, and it had to do with 2 other big things. One was the Panama Canal was under construction in the teens, and so the U.S. military wanted to be closer to get to there, and so they could do it from here than wherever else they would. And the other one is that Germany was lurking around in the Caribbean, trying to find something that they could mess with. And because I mentioned that, it was mentioned that I lived in Haiti, from that side, when I was living in Haiti, I learned that Haiti was a target of Germany in the teens. And so that's part of why the U.S. wanted these. And that's also part of why the U.S. Marines occupied Haiti from 1915 to 1932. So I connect all of that to what we're doing. And then the last part of the history and culture is what I start off with famous Virgin Islanders, and I asked them, well, what American founding father had connections to the Virgin Islands? And usually they don't know it all until I mention, well, there's a Broadway play that might give you a clue, and then they say Hamilton. And so then I talk about Alexander Hamilton, the fact that he was born in Nevis, but came here when he was 12, that he worked on the docks, that he was doing such a good job on the docks that the owner of the company felt comfortable to go on vacation for a year and leave him in charge. That's for a 15-year-old, that's a big deal.
Wow.
But the main thing that brought Alexander Hamilton to people's attention was there was a big hurricane that went through around the time he was 15. And he wrote a letter to his father describing the hurricane. And it looked like it was somebody's it sounded like it was somebody's PhD dissertation. And folks, when other people on St. Croix read it, I guess, they said, well, who wrote this? And they couldn't believe that a 15-year-old wrote it. And so then some of them started saying, oh, this guy needs a formal education. And so I guess they collected some money and sent him to Boston, and he ended up in New York at what then was King's College, and now is Columbia University.
Wow.
And so that's the way Alexander Hamilton got it. So then I also mentioned Tim Duncan, I also mentioned Aaliyah Boston, I also mentioned Nick Claxton, who's playing now for the New Jersey Net, the Brooklyn Nets. Right, thank you. And there's some other Virgin Islanders that, lately I've started mentioning J. Robert Oppenheimer, because that movie came out, because he spent a lot of time on St. John before they came up with the atomic bomb, and then afterwards, because he bought some property on St. John in 1957. And so folks go out with that kind of information.
Do you mention Terrence Stoneman also?
I'll add him to the list. I know who he is, I know what you're talking about, yes. Who he was. So then the third part of what we do at St. Thomas Cooks is side dishes. And while I'm talking to them, the chef, he or she, because I have both, is working on side dishes, local side dishes. And so then when the group goes over, then he or she will explain the side dishes, what they are, how to make them, and demonstrate them. And then after that, the chef leads them through cooking their own protein. When registrations are made, we ask, well, what is it that you're going to want to cook when you come? And the options are fish, chicken, beef, shrimp, vegan, vegetarian, with or without tofu. And so they tell us that in advance, so when they come, we have it ready. And so then they cook it. And then after with the sauce, and then after that, they get the side dishes, they get the sauce, they get the wine I give them, and they go sit down and eat, and everybody leaves happy. I've had a couple of comments on the sheet to say, we've been here a week, and this is the best food we've had all week. And they cook. So it's been a good experience for people. One group came through, and they're in California, and they went back, and the mother, there were two teenage boys, and one of them said he wanted to be a chef. And so I put him in close contact with our chef, so he may have a Virgin Islands mentor now, helping him to be a chef. But the mother's gone home, and she started to do things like this for kids in the neighborhood. So she called me up and wanted to get some ideas, and so we talked, and she gave me an idea of something that I'm going to do here. So that's what we do. It takes about 2 to 2.5 hours, and that's the St. Thomas Cooks experience. It's $150, but people has been leaving after.
Awesome.
Yeah, I could use more customers. There are gaps in between some of the groups that are coming. There was a lot of activity around Christmas and right after New Year's. It slowed down. So now what I'm doing is something that I did with the hardware store in Haiti, because I learned that there were down times my main area in that store was Christmas. I was a Christmas decorating place for Haiti, period. But after, was 25% of my sales for the year were in the last 6 weeks of the year.
Wow.
And so the focus was Haiti, but then I also had plants and lawn and garden things, because I'm a plant person. So there were gaps, and so I started filling in gaps. The first thing I did to fill in gaps was I was selling shelf brackets, but my only employee was a carpenter, and so I had him to start to make shelves out of wood with formica. He would cover the wood, the planks with formica, and that became a shelf that I would sell on the shelf supports. And so that helped to fill in gaps. And so what I'm doing now with St. Thomas Cooks to fill in gaps is, well, the first thing I'm doing is starting Monday, we're having a summer camp for kids.
Awesome.
We're gonna have 25 kids coming. We're gonna have 4, maybe 5 now, field trips. One field trip is gonna go to the farms in Bordeaux, so that they can see, so that the kids can see that food, how food grows, and not go home thinking that food grows in the supermarket.
That's right.
Exactly.
It was building kept, you got lost with it.
So they're gonna go out there, they're gonna go on the farm and, see the food growing, and then the camp, we're gonna buy little packets of food for them, like collard greens or some other vegetables, whatever they have that's in season, and then come back same day, and they're gonna cook it that afternoon. And so they'll take it from farm to their mouths in that one day. That's one field trip. Another one is we're gonna go into the kitchen of the Reef. We're going to go into the kitchen of the Ritz-Carlton. We're going to go to UVI, and we're gonna go to the food, there's one food truck in particular. If you've seen the 5 food trucks that are headed towards the Crown Bay Marina that are on the left going over there, one of them is a little barbecue place. It's a little hut looking thing. And so he's agreed for the folks to come, and he's gonna show them how he fires up his charcoal grill and talk about his business, because we want them to see business from a lot of different angles. That's why we're going to the hotels, but also we want them to see the food truck. And so that's, and we're gonna go to UVI. Oh, well, I'm in contact with the Department of Agriculture, so they're gonna show us a greenhouse. So they'll go see plants growing in there. And we're gonna go to UVI, there's somebody over there who does composting, and so they'll see the composting and hear about what that's all about. The classes along the way, during the weeks, because it's from 8 to 3, basically, Monday through Friday, from June the 24th to July the 19th. And so some of the other classes we're gonna have are STEM. We're connecting STEM to cooking, because when you do measurements, there's STEM in there. And so we're connecting that to cooking to get them, the campers, thinking about that. We're gonna have presentations on disaster preparedness. We're gonna have presentations on hurricanes and earthquakes. The guy's gonna come in and show what I call the life, not on there, the life of bees. He's gonna bring in not an actual beehive, but a cutout of what a beehive looks like on the inside, not with bees, but they'll be able to see the comb on the inside, and they'll be able to see the honey on the inside. Or, you know, and he has a glass side, so they'll be able to learn about what goes on, hear about what goes on inside of a beehive. We have a guy who's gonna do something on culture for half of his time, 1 hour, 3 times, 1 hour, once each week. And the other half is gonna be African drumming. So that's different. So we're doing different kinds of things, and for me, it's all about exposure. I mean, my career was higher ed administration, and my passion in doing that, and it was various schools where I worked, was to help students to figure out what it is they want to do with their lives, and then how to get there. And so what we're doing with this camp is the same kind of thing, just exposure of, well, these are possibilities. And I'd be really happy if we just get one camper who comes through here and says, as a result, I wanna be a chef. That would be, I think, tremendous. But we'll see. But they're all gonna get exposures that they may or may not have had before. So, that's gonna start Monday morning. That's $150 a week, $5 for the 4 weeks. And, I'm told that we'll be sold out and have a waiting list. So I'm waiting to be sold out and have a waiting list. So, okay, what I gave you is about the camp. This, if you're interested, is about the basics of what we do at what I described that we do at St. Thomas Scripts. We've had folks come through and do birthday parties. It would be a good place for corporations to come through and do team building activities. We now have 12 workstations. So we could have 12 people in a group to come, and it's a fun activity. So it could be a team building kind of effort. It would be a good place for wedding events, baby showers, all of those kinds of things. Just and as we get further along, I'm going to have like date night and special date night events. Thinking about having pop-up meal events. So that's St. Thomas Cooks. And the third piece of paper that I have here, in case anybody's interested in helping the camp to be more successful, is a sponsorship letter. So if anybody's interested in this, I can give this to you too, or I can email it to you. Are there any questions?
As extensive as your background is, you told us why you decided to start this cooking concept. What kind of background do you have in cooking? I know you're from Louisiana.
I'm not the chef. I'm not the chef. I'm the managing chef. They were calling me chef, and I said, no, I'm not a chef. But then it was pointed out to me by one of the chefs that, well, there are all kinds of different chefs, including a managing chef. So I said, okay, I'll be the managing chef. So that's why it says Chef Kraft on there.
Okay.
I cook. I mean, I cook at home, but I'll give you the 2 reasons that I decided not to be the chef of St. Thomas Cooks. One, because I'm not a chef, and I don't know local cooking. I mean, the focus is local cooking, and so that's important. The other one is because I don't have a West Indian accent, and I think that would add to the experience of what folks experience when they come through, what they hear when they come through. So, yeah. So this is a business activity. This isn't my, except that I'm a plant person since I was 8 years old. My father got my brother and I growing tomatoes when we were 8. When I was 8, he was 7. But it's just, I saw it as a business opportunity, and I said, okay,